Welcome to the Deep Sleep channel. We're travelling back in time to one of humanity's most profound losses. We're going to stand in a library that contained the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world. We're going to witness the moment when that knowledge was lost forever. This is the story of the Library of Alexandria, a place where human knowledge was collected and preserved, a place where the greatest minds of the ancient world contributed their work, a place that represented humanity's attempt to understand everything. But this library burned, or was destroyed, or gradually deteriorated. The exact details are lost to history. What we know is this: most of the knowledge contained in that library is gone forever, lost, destroyed, forgotten. This is a story about loss, about what we know and what we don't know, about the fragility of knowledge, about the impermanence of human achievement. Close your eyes. Let yourself walk through the halls of the Library of Alexandria. Let yourself read the texts that have survived. Let yourself wonder about the texts that were lost. Let yourself contemplate what humanity might have known if this library had survived. This is a meditation on knowledge, loss, and time. Part 1. The Library in its Glory. The Golden Age, the founding 3rd century BC. The Library of Alexandria was founded around 280 BC during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus in the city of Alexandria in Egypt. Alexandria was a new city, built by Alexander the Great about 20 years earlier. It was a city designed to be a center of culture, learning, and commerce. The library was part of a larger complex called the Mausoleum, the Temple of the Muses. This complex included gardens, lecture halls, and living quarters for scholars. It was a place dedicated to learning and the pursuit of knowledge. The library was not the first library. Ancient civilizations had collected texts before, but the Library of Alexandria was different. It was a systematic attempt to collect all the knowledge of the known world, not just local knowledge, not just religious texts, but everything. The vision, collecting all knowledge, the rulers of Alexandria had an extraordinary vision. They wanted to collect every book, every text, every work of human knowledge in existence. They wanted to bring together the wisdom of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Indian, and Hebrew scholars. They sent agents across the Mediterranean world. These agents would find texts, purchase them, and bring them back to Alexandria. Sometimes they would confiscate texts from ships arriving at Alexandria's port. They would make copies and return the originals to their owners, but the copies stayed in Alexandria. They employed scribes to make copies of texts. They had translators who would translate works from different languages into Greek. They were building a repository of human knowledge. The ambition was staggering. In an age before printing, before mass production, before copying machines, they were attempting to preserve all human knowledge in one place. The collection grows. By the height of its glory, the Library of Alexandria contained an estimated 500,000 to 1 million scrolls. Some estimates are higher. The exact number is unknown because the library's records were lost. These scrolls contained philosophy, works by Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, and other philosophical schools, the most comprehensive collection of Greek philosophy ever assembled. Mathematics, works on geometry, algebra, and mathematical theory, the foundation of Western mathematics. Astronomy, observations of the stars, theories about the cosmos, the accumulated astronomical knowledge of the ancient world. Medicine, texts on anatomy, surgery, disease, treatment, the most advanced medical knowledge of the time. History, chronicles of kingdoms, empires, wars, and civilizations, the historical record of the known world. Literature, poetry, drama, epic works, the artistic and literary heritage of ancient civilizations. Science, biology, physics, chemistry, the empirical study of the natural world. Religious texts, the Torah, Buddhist texts, Hindu texts, Persian texts, the spiritual wisdom of different cultures. Languages, grammars, dictionaries, and linguistic works in many languages, and much more. Works we've never heard of, works that have been completely lost. works whose names we don't even know. The scholars that would come to Alexandria to study for years, they would read the texts in the library, they would add their own work to the collection, they would live in the complex, supported by the Ptolemaic rulers. It was in many ways the first university, a place dedicated to learning, a place where knowledge was pursued for its own sake. Part 2. The decline. How the library was lost. The uncertainty, multiple stories. Here's what we don't know, exactly how the Library of Alexandria was destroyed or lost. The historical record is unclear. Different sources tell different stories. Some accounts say one thing, other accounts say another. The truth has been lost to history. This uncertainty is itself important. It's part of the story. We don't know how we lost this knowledge. We just know that we did. Theory 1, the fire of 48 BC. One account says that Julius Caesar set fire to ships in Alexandria's harbour in 48 BC during a civil conflict. The fire spread to the city. Buildings burned, and among the buildings that burned was the Library of Alexandria. This account comes from some ancient sources, but not all of them. Some scholars believe it's accurate, others think it's exaggerated or inaccurate. If this is true, then the library was destroyed in a single catastrophic moment. Scrolls burning, knowledge turning to ash, centuries of accumulated wisdom vanishing in flames. Imagine standing in the library as the fire approaches, knowing that everything you've preserved is about to be lost, knowing that the collected knowledge of the world is about to be destroyed, knowing that there's nothing you can do to stop it. Theory 2. The axis of gradual decay. Another account suggests that the library didn't burn in a single event, but gradually deteriorated. After the Ptolemaic dynasty fell to Rome, the library was no longer supported with the same resources. The collection was damaged by moisture, insects, and neglect. Scrolls deteriorated, texts were lost. The collection slowly diminished, and then, in later periods, parts of the library were deliberately destroyed. Religious authorities in the Christian and Muslim periods may have destroyed texts they considered heretical or contrary to their beliefs. If this is true, then the library died slowly, not in a moment of drama, but over centuries of gradual loss. Each scroll that rotted, each damaged text that was discarded, each book that was destroyed for religious reasons. This is perhaps more tragic than a single fire. It's lost through indifference. It's lost through the failure to maintain and preserve. It's lost through the centuries. Theory 3, dispersal. A third account suggests that the library wasn't destroyed at all, but dispersed. Texts were scattered. Some were taken to other libraries. Some were lost. Some were destroyed. But the destruction wasn't a single event. It was the scattering of a collection. This would mean that some texts from the Library of Alexandria survived, that they exist somewhere in other libraries, in other collections, that they were preserved, even if the library itself was not. The truth, we don't know. The reality is that we don't know exactly what happened. The Library of Alexandria gradually became less important. It gradually declined. By the time of later Roman rule, it was no longer the preeminent repository of knowledge it had been. Some texts survived. Some were translated and copied, so their knowledge persisted even if the original scrolls didn't. But most of the library was lost. The exact moment of loss, the exact cause, the exact number of texts destroyed, all of this is uncertain. This uncertainty is itself significant. It means that even our knowledge of the library's loss is incomplete. Part 3. What was lost? The texts we know about. We know about many texts that were lost because they're mentioned in other sources. Ancient writers reference works that no longer exist. They quote from texts that have been destroyed. For example, we know that many plays by the great Greek dramatists were lost. Aeschylus wrote 90 plays. We have only 7. Sophocles wrote over 120 plays. We have only 7. Euripides wrote nearly 90 plays. We have only 18. Where are the rest? They were in the Library of Alexandria. They were copied and read. They were studied by scholars. And then they were lost. What did those plays contain? What stories were told? What profound insights were expressed? We'll never know. The same is true for philosophy. We know about Aristotle because some of his works survived, but he wrote many works that have been lost. We know about his ideas through the works that remain, but we don't know what else he might have written. We know about ancient mathematics through the texts that survived, but there were works on mathematics in the library that are now lost. Mathematical knowledge that was developed and understood by ancient scholars, but which we have no record of. The texts we don't know about, but beyond the texts we know were lost, there were texts whose very existence we don't know. Works written by ancient scholars whose names we have never heard. Ideas developed and explored, but never preserved in any surviving text. When the Library of Alexandria was at its height, it contained texts that are completely unknown to us. We don't have even a reference to them. We don't know they existed. We just know that the library contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls, and only a tiny fraction of the knowledge in that library survives. Imagine what was in those unknown texts. Imagine the scientific discoveries, the philosophical insights, the historical records, the literary works. Imagine civilizations and scholars and ideas that have been completely forgotten. The loss of continuity. One of the greatest losses from the destruction of the Library of Alexandria was the loss of continuity. In the library, scholars could read the entire historical record. They could see how ideas developed over time. They could understand the connections between different fields of knowledge. When the library was lost, that continuity was broken. Knowledge was fragmented. We lost the ability to see the whole picture. We lost understanding of how ancient knowledge was organized and understood. We lost the context. Without the library, we don't know how ancient scholars understood the relationship between mathematics and astronomy, between medicine and philosophy, between different scientific disciplines. Part 4, what survived? The texts that survived did so because they were copied, because they were important enough that people made the effort to preserve them, because they were translated into multiple languages and distributed widely. If a text was copied many times, distributed across the Mediterranean world, translated into different languages, then when the Library of Alexandria was lost, some copies might survive elsewhere. But if a text was only in the Library of Alexandria, if it was not widely copied or translated, then when the library was lost, the text was lost forever. This means that what survived was somewhat random. It depended on which texts happened to be widely distributed. It depended on which texts were considered important enough to copy. It depended on accident and chance. The texts that survived were not necessarily the most important texts. They were the texts that, by chance, were copied and preserved. The recovery of lost knowledge. In later centuries, scholars worked to recover lost knowledge. Texts were discovered. Fragments survived. Quotations in other works allowed scholars to piece together knowledge about lost texts. Archaeologists found papyri with fragments of lost works. Ancient authors' references to lost texts allowed historians to reconstruct some of the content. But this recovery was incomplete. We recovered fragments. We recovered echoes. We did not recover the whole. Part 5, meditation. What the library teaches us. The fragility of knowledge. The Library of Alexandria teaches us that knowledge is fragile. It can be lost. It can be destroyed. It can disappear. We tend to think of knowledge as permanent. We tend to think that once something is known, it will always be known. But the Library of Alexandria shows us that this is not true. Knowledge exists only in minds and in records. If the records are destroyed, if the minds that hold the knowledge die, then the knowledge is lost. The Library of Alexandria shows us that all knowledge is temporary. All understanding is fragile. All accumulated wisdom can disappear. The impermanence of civilization. The Library of Alexandria was built by a great civilization. It represented the height of Ptolemaic Egypt's power and achievement. And then the civilization changed. Power shifted, and the library declined. This teaches us about the impermanence of civilization. Great achievements can be lost. Great institutions can disappear. What seems permanent is temporary. We build libraries, we build universities, we build collections of knowledge, but these are all temporary. They will eventually be lost, or transformed, or destroyed. The cost of loss. The loss of the Library of Alexandria had real costs. It cost us knowledge. It cost us the ability to understand the ancient world fully. It cost us the continuity of learning. If the library had survived, we might know more about ancient medicine. We might have better understanding of ancient mathematics. We might have access to historical records that would help us understand the ancient world. The loss set back human knowledge. It forced later scholars to rediscover things that had already been discovered and understood. The randomness of what survives. What survived from the ancient world was somewhat random. It depended on which texts happened to be copied. It depended on which languages those texts were translated into. It depended on accident and chance. This means that our understanding of the ancient world is incomplete and biased. We understand what happened to survive, not necessarily what was most important or most true. Some of the greatest works of ancient thought may have been lost. Some of the most important discoveries may have been forgotten, and we will never know what we're missing. The challenge of preservation. The Library of Alexandria shows us the difficulty of preserving knowledge across time. Scrolls deteriorate, books burn, languages become obsolete, records are lost. Preserving knowledge requires constant effort. It requires institutions that are stable enough to maintain collections. It requires people who are committed to preservation. It requires resources and support. The Library of Alexandria failed at this task. The knowledge wasn't preserved. But the failure teaches us that preservation is difficult. It requires ongoing commitment. It requires resources. It requires stability. Our own fragility. In our time, we have developed new methods of preserving knowledge. We have printing presses. We have digital storage. We have the internet. But our knowledge is fragile too. Digital files can be lost. Formats can become obsolete. Power can be cut off. The internet can be shut down. We have more copies of text than ever before. We can duplicate information easily, but we also depend on fragile infrastructure. We depend on electrical power. We depend on institutions that may not last forever. The Library of Alexandria reminds us that we too could lose our knowledge, that what we consider preserved and permanent could be lost to future generations. Part 6. The question. What if the library had survived? A different world. Imagine if the Library of Alexandria had survived intact. Imagine if all those texts had been preserved through the Middle Ages and into the modern era. What would we know that we don't currently know? What discoveries would have been made faster? What knowledge would have been available to medieval and Renaissance scholars? We can only speculate, but it's clear that the survival of the library would have changed human history. Some of the scientific discoveries we made in the 17th and 18th centuries might have been made 1,000 years earlier. Some of the knowledge we've lost might have been rediscovered faster. The lost sciences. Some of the most significant losses might have been in the sciences. Ancient scholars made discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and physics, but much of this knowledge was lost. If the library had survived, we might have continuous records of scientific development. We might have understood how ancient scholars approached problems. We might have had the mathematical and theoretical tools that earlier scientists could have used. The lost histories. The library contained historical texts, chronicles of kingdoms and empires, records of events. If these had survived, we would have a much better understanding of the ancient world. We could read in the original sources about the history of Egypt, Greece, Rome, Persia, and other civilizations. We could understand events directly, rather than through fragmentary sources. The lost philosophies. The library contained philosophical works. If all of these had survived, we would have a complete picture of ancient philosophical thought. We could see the full development of philosophical ideas. We could understand philosophers' complete works, not just fragments. The impossibility of knowing. But here's the profound truth. We can never know what would have happened if the library had survived. We can speculate, we can imagine, but we cannot know. The loss is permanent. The knowledge is gone, and we can never recover what we've lost. This is the ultimate meaning of the Library of Alexandria. It teaches us that some losses are permanent, some knowledge is irretrievable, some opportunities are gone forever. Part 7, the meaning of the library. Today, the library's legacy. The Library of Alexandria is gone, but its legacy remains. It stands as a symbol of humanity's attempt to preserve and understand knowledge. It reminds us of the value of learning. It reminds us of our responsibility to preserve knowledge for future generations. The library is remembered. Texts about it survive. Scholars have studied it, and it continues to inspire people to create libraries, to preserve knowledge, to pursue understanding. Modern libraries. The dream of the Library of Alexandria lives on in modern libraries. The Library of Congress, the British Library. Libraries around the world are dedicated to the same principle, the preservation and organization of human knowledge. These modern libraries are, in a sense, attempts to recreate what the Library of Alexandria represented. They are attempts to collect human knowledge, to preserve it, to make it available to scholars and students. But they are also vulnerable. They depend on funding. They depend on institutions. They depend on societal commitment to preserving knowledge, just as the Library of Alexandria did, the digital library. In the digital age, we have new possibilities for preserving knowledge. We can digitize texts. We can distribute them across multiple servers. We can make them available to anyone with internet access. The internet, in some ways, is a realization of the Library of Alexandria's dream. It contains enormous amounts of human knowledge. It makes that knowledge available to billions of people. But the internet is also fragile. It depends on electrical power. It depends on stable institutions. It depends on agreement about what should be preserved and what should not. Our responsibility. The Library of Alexandria teaches us that we have a responsibility to preserve knowledge, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. We must maintain our libraries. We must support our institutions of learning. We must protect our records and documents. We must work to ensure that knowledge is not lost. And we must be humble. We must recognize that no institution is permanent, that what we preserve today might not survive tomorrow, that we are temporary stewards of knowledge that belongs to humanity. Part 8, Sleep with the Mystery. The unknown texts. As you drift into sleep tonight, thinking about the Library of Alexandria, contemplate the unknown texts. Imagine the works that were written by ancient scholars but are now completely lost. Imagine the ideas that were developed and understood, but which we have no record of. Imagine a physician in Alexandria who understood something about human disease, something that took modern medicine centuries to rediscover. Imagine a mathematician who solved problems that we're still working on today. Imagine a philosopher who had insights about the human condition that have been completely forgotten. These people existed, their knowledge existed, and it's gone, lost, forgotten. The fragility of your own knowledge. Think about the knowledge you carry, the things you understand, the insights you've had. What happens to that knowledge when you die? What parts of it are preserved? What parts are lost forever? The Library of Alexandria teaches us that we have a responsibility to preserve knowledge, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. We must maintain our libraries. We must support our institutions of learning. We must protect our records and documents. We must work to ensure that knowledge is not lost. And we must be humble. We must recognize that no institution is permanent, that what we preserve today might not survive tomorrow, that we are temporary stewards of knowledge that belongs to humanity. Part 8. Sleep with the mystery, the unknown texts. As you drift into sleep tonight thinking about the Library of Alexandria, contemplate the unknown texts. Imagine the works that were written by ancient scholars but are now completely lost. Imagine the ideas that were developed and understood but which we have no record of. Imagine a physician in Alexandria who understood something about human disease, something that took modern medicine centuries to rediscover. Imagine a mathematician who solved problems that we're still working on today. Imagine a philosopher who had insights about the human condition that had been completely forgotten. These people existed, their knowledge existed, and it's gone, lost, forgotten. The fragility of your own knowledge. Think about the knowledge you carry, the things you understand, the insights you've had. What happens to that knowledge when you die? What parts of it are preserved? What parts are lost forever? The Library of Alexandria teaches us that knowledge is fragile. The knowledge in your own mind is temporary. It will die with you unless you find a way to preserve it. The impermanence of everything. The Library of Alexandria reminds us that everything is impermanent. Great institutions fall. Knowledge is lost. Civilizations disappear. What seems permanent is temporary. Sleep knowing that change is constant. Sleep knowing that what we build today may not last forever. Sleep knowing that we are temporary and our achievements are temporary. But also sleep knowing that by preserving knowledge, by creating institutions, by sharing what we understand, we participate in something larger than ourselves. We contribute to something that might outlast us. We add to the store of human knowledge. The mystery of loss. The Library of Alexandria is ultimately a mystery. We don't know exactly what happened to it. We don't know exactly what was lost. We don't know what knowledge has disappeared. This mystery is itself important. It reminds us that there are things we don't know. There are gaps in our knowledge. There are questions we can never fully answer. Sleep with this mystery. Let it open your mind to the vastness of what we don't understand. Let it remind you that the known world is surrounded by the unknown. Farewell from the Deep Sleep Channel. Thank you for spending this time contemplating the Library of Alexandria. Thank you for thinking about loss and impermanence and the fragility of knowledge. Thank you for imagining the texts that were lost and the knowledge that has disappeared. As you sleep tonight, you carry with you the image of a great library, a place where the accumulated knowledge of the world was gathered, a place where the greatest minds of antiquity worked, a place that is now gone. You carry with you the awareness that knowledge is fragile, that what we preserve is temporary, that loss is permanent, that impermanence is fundamental to existence. But you also carry with you the knowledge that humans persist in trying to preserve and understand, that we build libraries, that we create institutions, that we work to pass knowledge down to future generations. Sleep knowing that you are part of this effort, that your life, your learning, your understanding, all of it contributes to human knowledge. Sleep knowing that even though the Library of Alexandria is gone, the human drive to understand persists. Sleep well, knowing that in the darkness, we still strive to preserve light. Good night from the Deep Sleep Channel. Sleep well.